whole film festival, we're having a film chat, and we're lucky enough to have representatives of 3 of the short films that are going to be playing at the festival, and quite a diverse group of films, and all very interesting in their way. They're packaged under the, at least for today's purposes, under the title "Familiar Faces," which when you see these movies, you'll see some familiar faces. So I guess that's part of the reason why it's called that. My name is Tim Miller. I can't remember if I mentioned that. Film critic on the K. Just for starters, I thought maybe what we could do is go through our Brady Bunch grouping of people, and if you could introduce yourselves. We'll go. I'll mention which movie, but maybe if you could introduce yourself. Yeah, maybe even tell us where you are right now, what your connection is to the film, and maybe give a short description of your film too. So why don't we start with the Leave 'Em Laughing group? We have 2 people from that film. Chris, did you want to start?
Morning. My name is Chris Cashman. I'm calling here on Zoom in San Diego, California. I'm the director, writer, and producer of the short film. It's basically a true story based on Dick Shawn, the comedian who passed away on stage. He's actually recorded as the only actual stand-up comedian to die on stage on point in 1987. And we basically took a short story that Carlo Copo, who's with us today, who wrote an article that was published in the LA Times, and we transformed that into a short film. And Carlo, if you want to take it from here.
Hi, I'm Carlo Copo. Thanks, Chris. And I'm in Del Mar, California, Paradise. And Chris is right. I was fortunate, I guess, to be present on April 17, 1987 at Mandeville Auditorium at UCSD when Dick Shawn was putting on a new one-man show. There were about 200 people in the audience. And I was a devotee of Shawn because he had starred in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And also he was he was Hitler in the original Producers, directed by Mel Brooks. So I was a follower of him. He was an off-the-wall, zany comedian, very unpredictable, kind of a precursor to Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams and others. So we were in the audience, and I found myself bizarrely remembering every single joke that he told that night and rehearsing them inside, and I didn't know why. 22 minutes into the act, Dick declared that the entire universe outside the auditorium had ceased to exist, positing that, and asked the audience, he said, we have doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, professors, students, and we can recreate the universe. And I will be your leader. And he rose up on one leg and threw his arm up into the air. And he fell gently onto his right knee and fell even more gently onto his chest and lay on the stage prostrate for an agonizing 8 minutes. The audience, knowing Dick Shawn, didn't know whether it was part of the act or not. They picked up the comedic repartee, and it seemed to me as a participant and an observer that he had transferred the comedic enterprise to the audience themselves, what I thought was a matter of genius. Or the other part of me thought, my God, he may be dead. 8 minutes later, a doctor rushed on stage, flipped him over, started giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. There was a shriek from the audience. Still, people didn't know if it was part of the act or not. His son, by the way, was a producer and was in the box upstairs. Finally, a lady came on stage and said, the show is canceled. You'll get refunds. And still, people thought that Shawn was going to rise up and go on with his act, because about 2 weeks before, he'd done virtually the same thing in Los Angeles in one of his shows, laying on the stage between Acts 1 and Act 2 for 15 minutes, and then rising from a pile of bricks to start his second performance. I rushed home and I wrote the story all night long. Found that I had almost total recall of every single joke that had been told. I've never done that before or since. I sent it off to the LA Times on next week, following week, and they published the article along with a local paper in San Diego. And a good friend of mine, David Brampman, who is my co-executive producer, and David thought it was just a great piece of writing. And so we searched and searched for the right director to put it together. We finally found Chris Cashman. And I want to say it doesn't always take me 32 years to find the right director, but in this case we did. And Chris wrote a wonderful screenplay, including me in the story, the beginning and the end. And we shot the film in San Diego last summer, and realizing a dream, the whole purpose of which was to bring Dick Shawn to light and to let the public know that this great comedic actor had died on stage. Again, as Chris pointed out, an incident which has never occurred to my research in the history of theater, whether it's performance arts or not. Someone die on stage, on point, and have the audience take over the act. So with that, I'll give it back to Chris if there's anything else, but that's our film, and we're thrilled to be part of Woods Hole.
Yep, you nailed it, Carlo. So yeah, on to the next.
Okay.
That's kind of a tricky one where, you know, I was wondering how you were going to handle the description of it, because not everybody would know how, you know the story of Dick Shawn's demise. And, I mean, it's kind of, it's the end, but so it's sort of, you're kind of giving away the end in a way, but because the movie's about so much more than that, it doesn't hurt, I don't think, by telling people, but I was wondering how we were going to handle that.
Yeah, I know.
And so I'm glad you guys dealt with it instead of me having to.
I'll tell you this, just to conclude, when I walked out of the theater into the lobby, there were two Australian guys leaning against the wall, and they were laughing. And I walked up to them and I said, "Why are you laughing?" I started interviewing people, and they said, "You California people, you just, you don't get it. He did this 2 weeks ago. He's going to rise up in 10 minutes. We're going on with the act." And at that moment, the sirens were wailing in the background. And I was still on the hook of, am I writing about a death? Am I writing about an act I'm not going to see the end of? Anyway, that's our story. Thanks for the time.
Oh, sure. Were you planning on writing about it anyway, or was it inspired because of what?
Number two, it was inspired because of the moment. I was there with another couple that I had called spontaneously that night. It was, ironically, it was Good Friday. Was he going to rise in 3 days or not?
Yeah,
I don't
right.
know. But they asked me out for a drink afterwards, and I said, for the first time in my life, nope, no drink. I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm going to write.
It almost seems like another comedian it's reminiscent of is Andy Kaufman, where you don't, is this a put on or is this for real or what? It just,
well, and since this time, as Chris will tell you too, we've been very fortunate to have, my granddaughter wrote a story about it in the Stanford Daily newspaper, and it went on the internet, and Dick Shawn's son contacted us. And we were concerned about that, whether it would be a good thing or a bad thing. He just thought it was fantastic. And he said that we were the only people in 32 years to ever pay tribute to his dad, Dick Shawn. And he was thrilled that this piece was out there. And he just hopes that it will remind people what a great performance artist he was. And so he ennobled the film that way. It was really nice.
it is quite a tribute in its way. I mean, I do think that people, I mean, I remember, of course, Dick Shawn because I'm a geezer, but for people who don't know who Dick Shawn was, I think seeing this movie will make them want to, look into his career and seek him out if they have mad world or whatever.
Well, and if you ever saw his Hitler and the Producers, I mean, it was it's the one. It was the linchpin that turned that whole show around from a disaster to a success, which ended up being a disaster.
Right. Okay, let's move on now to Milford, which was made oddly enough by, well, written by a couple of guys from Milford, I believe. And Seth, maybe you can, well, introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your film, please.
Yeah, I'm Seth Barnett, and I co-directed it with my brother Nathan. I'm Nathan, and yeah, we wrote it together, directed together, and I'm in it as Jace Sloan, a guy from Milford, Massachusetts. Yeah, and we are from Milford, but well, we're from Mashpee originally. Yeah, and then we moved off Cape, and now ultimately we're in LA right now. We're in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the story of a guy living in a small town. It's sort of like an anywhere small town, but we chose Milford because that's where we moved from when we came to California. It's about a guy that wants to change his life and move somewhere, but he never really does. Just always kind of says he's going to, and it's kind of based on some, you know, people we've known who are just like, and even ourselves, like to get ourselves to go to California after a while. Someone that just wants to like make a change and is having a hard time pulling the trigger to do it.
Yeah, I think it deals just also with that thing that everyone deals with, like procrastination. Like you'll have a friend who will tell you all the time all these things they're gonna do, and they're like, oh yeah, I got this idea, and this thing, and they constantly like lay out the whole big plan in their mind. It almost seems like they have almost everything ready, but the thing they never seem to be able to possess is just like to take the first step to actually commit to putting it into action. That's kind of what drove the story to this movie. That kind of a person.
Who first came up with this idea, or was this just something where you were brainstorming and came up with it together?
It's hard to say because like I had an idea in my head, and then Nathan also mentioned he wanted to do something that was a little bit different than his normal like comedy stuff.
Yeah, I do a lot of physical comedy is like my main thing, like real big Jim Carrey, Buster Keaton type stuff. And I wanted to do something that's not funny at all. And Seth leans more in that direction when he shoots his things. So we figured we would do something.
I think there is there's like some deadpan humor in it for sure, but it's not like straight up physical comedy.
It's the least funny thing I've done, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it was kind of like, oh, you know, I was thinking about doing this thing like a character I just spoke about, and then he was like, oh yeah, sounds good, and he wanted to do something a little more straight as well. So it kind of was like a mutual thing.
Yeah, we kind of came together with it. It was like, oh, I'll do a story about a guy who won't leave Milford. It was a sort of just like my first slice of life type story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because as I was looking at, you know, I watched 6 of the short films last night, including the 3 of filmmakers here. And I was trying to sort of divide them into genres, just in terms of comedy and drama or whatever. And yours was the trickiest because it's interesting that you say that, because I can see, I mean, if it is a comedy, it is very subtle or low key or dry or however you want to describe it. You know, so it's and I think that's a good thing sometimes when, you know, when a film sort of defies classification in that way, where, look, real life, I mean,
yeah,
you know, aren't we living comedies?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess there is 2 different versions of the film that will exist. The whole thing, the full story is about 30 minutes, but I know that's hard to like put out there for people to watch a short. So we did a version of which you saw, which is 15, to try to make more concise. It's just about him and his A story. And that loses a little bit of humor. It's not that there's that much more humor.
No, it's not like it's a huge.
But I think the overall you would get a few more laughs, and that's a little bit more of a representation of what we normally do. But for this purpose of this, and like film festivals and more of a straightforward story, it's a little more dry.
yeah. Okay, great. Next, we have a movie with a very strong local connection, about as close as you can get when it comes to Woods Hole, Island Queen. Maybe we could start with, let's see, it was co-directed, right, by Zachary and Jen, and written by Zachary. Is that right? I think I've got that right. And we also have Daniel from the movie. So maybe if the three of you can introduce yourselves and, talk a little bit about what, your movie.
Hi, I'm Jen Harris. I'm the producer and co-director of Island Queen. I am currently also in San Diego, California, and I will leave the description up to Zachary.
Hi, I'm Zachary. I'm currently in New York City. I grew up in Falmouth, though, on Woods Hole Road, on the way to Woods Hole. And I worked on the boat that we filmed this on for 5 summers as a teenager. And Island Queen it takes place on a ferry boat that goes from Falmouth to Martha's Vineyard. And it's about a teenage hockey player who it's the day he's going to try out for figure skating, but he gets trapped on the boat by its kind of, let's call them aggressive captain and first mate. And it's sort of like everything that can go wrong goes wrong before the boat even leaves the dock.
And it isn't Titanic. It's not a drama. It is most definitely a comedy. And you have some, a big name cast. You've got Rachel Dratch from Saturday Night Live in it as I guess you would say first mate, I guess, but
Deckhand.
Deckhand. She's hilarious, and Jesse Tyler Ferguson from Modern Family plays the captain. I was wondering just how closely, whether it was biographical at all, and maybe we can. Well, actually, why don't we talk about that right now?
Yeah.
Zach, how autobiographical is it?
I mean, I worked on the boat. I played hockey. I figure skated in my kitchen in my socks as a kid. And the events of the story didn't unfold in the way that they did, but 5 summers on a boat is a deep well of stories. And pretty much it was all drawn from, just like you work with a group of 5 people, a group of people for 5 years, you have a deep, deep well of stories. And so we just sort of drew on a lot of it, but it's fiction, but it's, it's a very true to my core story.
Sure. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. And then Daniel, can you introduce yourself too?
My name is Daniel Rampula, and I was the DP on the film. Okay. I've worked with Jen before, and I was aware of Zachary, but we worked pretty closely on the pre-production of the movie.
So how much of it was shot on the Cape?
All of it.
All of it. Yeah, 100%.
All of it.
Yeah.
And I know Rachel Dratch has a Cape connection. I interviewed her a while ago. I can't remember what it was in connection with actually, but I know she I think at least Summers and Dennis, did you know her from the Cape, or did that play a part in casting her, the fact that she had a Cape connection?
Not the connection. It actually was like a fun surprise that we when she showed up on set, she was like, oh, this boat. And she actually knew the theme song. And there's a short moment of the film where she's humming the theme song, and it wasn't scripted. It was just like, oh, she knows. Okay, great. So that was like a great added bonus.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And Jesse Tyler Ferguson does he have Cape connections too, or no? Yeah.
No. He's someone that we know socially and through other projects in the city.
Okay.
And
Okay. Oh, great. All right. Let's see. As far to get back to Leave 'Em Laughing, and Carlo, you did, give us a pretty good idea of what it was like to be sitting there. I mean, it's one of those you know, truth is stranger than fiction kind of stories. I mean, it's
Right.
just it's riveting. But you know, what do you think the sort of moral of the story is? Because you know, there's you kind of connect, and Chris, you know, you kind of connect what happens to Dick Shawn with how it affects Carlo's life in not just in where, hey, I just experienced this, you know, bizarre, unreal thing, and it's much more than, hey, this is an opportunity to write this, tell this amazing story in the Los Angeles Times. I mean, it goes beyond that. It becomes, my impression is, something that had such a powerful personal effect on Carlo. And so maybe both of you could address that a bit as far as, well, what, you know, what was that effect?
Yeah, it was something I'd never experienced before or since. I was sitting in the audience, and when the act opened with a, as the story lays it out, nothing was on stage except a square table with a red tablecloth, and in the middle of the tablecloth, protruding through the cloth, was Dick Shawn's head with a shock of white hair, just his head. And the audience settled in, but you know, audiences take a moment to settle in. And the first line of the show was, "I'm not myself tonight." And it brought the audience together. And then someone would move and you'd see his eyes go across the audience, and he would say something like, you know, university people have a poor sense of timing. And he would pick up every little nuance in the audience. And he had us woven together in this fabric of what's next. But parallel with that, I'm sitting with my friends, and inside me, I'm repeating the lines to myself. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I had this chill go through me, and I have it go through me right now. I was repeating the lines, and then the next line would come out, and I'd repeat that one, and I'd go back to the first one. And at one point that Chris actually put into the film, someone in front of me turned around and went, shh, you know, because I was mouthing it and ruining it for that one audience participant. And as it went on, it continued and continued. And then after the event with the head, the theater went black, and Shawn emerged, and he was dressed all in black, again with that shock of white hair, and he stood tall in front of us like a potential leader. And that's when he rose up in the full complement of himself and said, "I love universities. We got doctors, lawyers, Indians, chiefs, intellectuals, non-intellectual students, professors, whatever." Huh?
Don't give it all away.
I won't give it all away.
Yeah, but I think one of the big things, you know, from, as you guys can all tell, Carlo, this obviously has been living this story and this experience, this show, for now over 30 years. And I think that's what I found, that he was, I obviously used a little creative, or I should say Hollywoodized it, that I realized that during this part of his life, he was a recent divorcee, and obviously, you know, he had obviously kind of an estranged relationship with his son. So I kind of incorporate that at the same time of him going through this, watching this man die on stage. So kind of spending some time with Carlo, I could tell that I was taking parts of his life and kind of encompassing in that. And Tim, you saw that. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to this than obviously a man dying on stage.
Right.
Right.
You know, so that's
Right.
kind of how I pieced that together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that point, I was a kind of a closet writer at the time. I'd never published anything, and I thought, my God, do I have to have someone die on stage to get published? Terrible. So
Yeah.
I really pay credit to Chris, because he did bring the two parallel stories together.
And what was the headline on the, I think he used it in the movie, the headline on the LA Times piece? You remember what the
It was the I think
Was it? I think was it Exit Laughing?
Or was it leave some Dick Shawn leave some laughing or audience something?
Yeah,
Maybe
it
it
was
was what you
last
got.
show on Earth or something like that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of parallels to this whole thing, and
Yeah.
that
It's
quote
just-
he has at the very end, stating that he would rather, die in front of educated people.
All right.
He said
Right.
that before he died, obviously. So
Yeah. Well, and with his sort of conceptual humor, I mean, it just, like you said, like some of the comedians you mentioned, I mean, it's just, he certainly was, you could even see it in a movie like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, where, you have all these comedians, it's sort of a showcase of all the comedians of that era. But there's something about Dick Shawn that's just sort of different.
And
For a mainstream audience, some people are going to just embrace it and think, oh my God, this is hilarious. And other people might not get it at first. Or
yeah, the third theme, and then I'll be quiet, was after I wrote the article, the two articles, sociology professor from UCSD came out to interview me. And it's a theme. It's not really in the movie, but it's implied. And he talked to me about it. And he asked me, did you have a tape recorder that night? And I said no, because he said you really had total recall. I explained that to him. He said, but the other thing, I've interviewed a whole lot of people, and you're the first person I've talked to who actually wanted to talk about the death on stage. He said, a lot of people will not confront the fact that they've been in the presence of death. And that's something I want to explore. He was supposed to write an article at UCSD about that from a sociological point of view. I never saw the article, but that was another parallel theme, I think, in the whole thing. You're confronted with that right in front of you, and you still don't know. Right.
Well, I mean, certainly one of the themes I jotted down, I tried to write down something about each film, and as far as themes.
Sure.
And I mean, one sort of not simple in terms of all it represents, but it tells you that life is short,
Right.
and that you just never know. And I in part, I imagine that's one of the things that I think the movie sort of says, in a way, of how that acknowledging that creates some action on your part, Carlo, at the end of the movie, which takes the movie, I think, into another realm.
Right. But I just got to pay tribute to Chris. He did a wonderful job, both on the script and on the filming. It was just magnificent. A dream realized. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go to the Barnetts. By the way, Nathan, I think it was maybe 2 years ago I saw.
Was it Neutral?
Neutral at the Provincetown Film Festival International.
Oh, yeah.
That was such a great movie. So when I realized, oh my gosh, that's the same guy.
Yeah. I look much different in Milford, but
it's
Neutral.
weird that you look familiar, but you look different. But it was like, boy, I went by IMDb, and it's like, whoa, he was in that, of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad you saw that. Yeah, that was a short that was like a personal one for me. But Seth was a major help of that. All the car driving itself was Seth laying down.
All right, Seth.
In the 72 BMW manual, he's shifting with the stick in his stomach as he's looking at a monitor on the floor where we had a camera in the front, and it was reversed too. The image was reversed, so he had to anyway.
Oh my god!
I could go on it forever about that one. That's the wrong movie.
Yeah, but I did. That was great. So it's nice to see, and I think maybe that's one of the nice things about these film festivals is that you kind of become acquainted in your way with some different filmmakers and getting a chance to see short films and becoming aware of who made them and looking for their other work. But I did love that movie. To get back to Milford, can you describe not the movie, Milford? Like what made you think, okay, this is the right setting for us, this story?
Well, Milford to us, since we were from there, we sort of like make fun of it a little bit, even though it's a fine town. It's nothing wrong with it. But we always wanted to go, like we grew up in the Cape, we moved off Cape. Our parents are still in Milford, but they go to Captain Kidd's and they go to Woods Hole every single weekend. That's like when we come home, the first thing we do is we always drive to the coffee place across, I forget what it's called, Pie in the Sky. Like my parents were always there. So
yeah.
We chose, Cape is like too nice for us. So Milford is more of like in line with what this guy is. It's like,
Yeah.
it's more
just
of
a regular, like kind of like, I guess it's like a blue collar kind of
working class town. And for like a teenager or a person who's in the younger, like they would love to get out of a town like that.
Yeah, yeah.
This guy has that mentality of since he was a teenager, he's just been wanting to leave, but he hasn't done it yet. So
I think just personally that town related to us, and if you had grown up in another town in another state, you would have just in the same way you would have thought of it, like, oh, this is the place I wanted to sort of escape.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could relate. I'm from the Detroit area. Milford without the
either you want to leave or you love it forever. That's what we've learned about people in hometowns.
Yeah, or it's a great place to say you're from.
Yeah.
And as far, I mean, what as far as the main character, I mean, what was he based on? I mean, I get it that it it's based on a feeling of wanting to get away and that type of thing. But was it based on any particular person or group of people that you knew, or how did you sort of settle on his character?
It was based on kind of based on me, as I worked as a gravedigger in Natick, Massachusetts for a few years. Seth actually did the same job years before that, but that was the last job I had while saving to move to California.
Yeah.
And I drove a moped around to different drive-throughs, like different Dunkin' Donuts and stuff, and I'd pick up quarters and change. And I was just every night I'd pick up quarters and stuff, and I was saving as much money as I could to finally move to California. So doing all those random things was sort of part of what this guy does. But like he wouldn't have an actual job as a gravedigger. This character is a little too lazy to do anything real. He just does. It's like the path of least resistance for this guy, and it's kind of based on me, but it's a lot of it's fabricated.
Or exaggerated, maybe.
Exaggerated, yeah.
For me too, I had ideas in my head. Nathan had an idea. He's like, I want to do this kind of a movie about this guy, and then I said, oh, I have these ideas, and he's like, oh, that's too serious. And then we kind of left the project for a couple months, and he came back about 2 months later. He goes, I got this idea. I can do it like this. And I'm like, this is everything I just told you. You've sort of digested in your brain. It's become sort of
that happens a lot.
And then it had some of my stuff in it. So the guy for me, like there are people I've known in my life that's sort of just people you've worked around. No one in particular, but it is a conglomeration of like people I've known throughout my life, and then for Nathan as well. So it's like I think it's a blending of all of it.
It's interesting how. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I like to say that he won't agree with this, but Seth pretty much directed the whole thing, because I was like in it and there, and it was hard for me to think of the direction and directing the other actors, and even myself, what I find very hard to do. So it was nice to have him sort of just direct the whole thing. I could kind of just be in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, the guy, and I don't think this is giving too much away because it happens early on, but like the guy has opportunities to make a regular wage, which would make it easier to move to California, rather than just scrounging all the time.
Yeah.
And yet he prefers it. Do you think, and I was wondering about that, as far as why he would have that it's sort of self-destructive in a way. Do you think it's mostly just path of least resistance and laziness, or do you think something else is at play there?
I think it's both. It's definitely self-destructive, kind of like almost like he doesn't want to go, because if he makes it so he can go, that's scary to leave. So he probably chooses this path of pain so that he doesn't have to go.
It's like that weird cycle you get stuck in where, like, you know, you really want to do something and then someone offers you the opportunity, and then it's just easier to not do it. But at the same time, you want to do this thing and you're stuck in this like procrastination cycle.
Yeah.
So I think,
Well, and maybe, I mean, this is sort of a universal, and I think, you know, that's what film, you know, good films do, is have, you know, they deal with a specific situation, but capture a universal, and that idea of maybe a fear of failure too. Like,
yeah,
if you know, isn't it easier to dream than to actually live out the dream?
yeah, exactly.
and you really get that message.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah,
the
and
analysis paralysis.
Pardon?
Analysis paralysis. It's like
Yeah,
you
right.
analyze forever.
And yeah, but so do both of you now live in California?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in LA right now.
Yeah, and so did you struggle at all with the anxiety about you know, moving from one coast to the other, or not?
I didn't particularly. We were 20. I was 24. Seth was 22. Now I'm 39. So we've been here for 15 years, and we're pretty eager young people when we came out here. So
Yeah.
I think if anything, you know, Nathan came. He's like, I want to do this thing. I was like, okay. And like, if he was going, it kind of gave me encouragement and strength. And I think if anything, that sort of anxiety that may be in that character could have come from my end of the influence, for sure.
And maybe because that 2-year difference, being 22 and making such a leap, maybe that had something to do with it.
Could be. I think I just kind of like understood that part of like the human condition better, because Nathan has a lot more outward confidence. I'm always just kind of like, oh, well, you could do it, and I analyze things and I'll think about it, as opposed to just like Nathan just jumps off.
Yeah.
Working.
yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why you've got that balance of the sort of comedy and drama, and
Yeah.
you know, because of the different approaches or personalities.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Great. Actually, it's interesting that with all 3 films, you know, there are you know, are such collaborations. We, you know, again, going to Zachary and Jen with Island Queen, where how was it's interesting. Usually with films, you see maybe 2 writers and 1 director, but in your case, it was you know, the 2 directors. How did that work? Did you split duties, or you know?
I would say directing and production wise, Zachary and I split duties, and props and set design and pretty much everything was duties. You know, honestly, the Zachary, I had collaborated with Daniel. I've made some things with Daniel before, and I really love working with him, and I can't imagine making anything without him, to be honest. Him and Dean Snodgrass. And Zachary has a lot of writing. I've been in a play of his that I just find really funny and touching, and I really love his work as a writer and a performer. And I've always wanted to work with him more. We only knew each other about a year, right?
Crazy, yeah.
It was crazy.
It's so crazy.
But it was one of those things where you just meet someone and you're like, and it's just in sync. Like Daniel, like when I met Daniel, I was like, oh, I like him. He gets it. We get it. And I felt that way with Zachary. And Zachary's like, I want to actually make something, which a lot of us, you know, I mean, I'll speak for maybe just me, Zachary, like a lot of us just want our work made rather than trying to pitch and have someone else make it. Zachary said, I want to make something. And Zachary has a handful of films, and Island Queen was one that was a feature. I was like, make that into a short and let's just do it. Like, well, I'll make a real cheap, dirty budget and let's go for it. And I spoke with Daniel, and we gave Daniel the script, and Daniel was in, and the 3 of us kind of, we got to have a scout day, and we really just piece the thing together. It like what you were saying, the word collaboration. I mean, for lack of a better word, I feel it was very much so, along with everyone who worked on the film and the locals that helped us in Woods Hole. I mean, Alicia Orsini from the Woods Hole Film Festival was someone that I reached out to when I was looking for a scripty, some other grips, and some people to work on the film. She gave me a lot of names, and her husband worked on the film. Scott worked on the film, and I think their baby is in our film. Like, I was like, everybody walked through at the end. So that's sort of how it came about. Zach, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know, as Jen mentioned, theater is where I started and come from, and I've never worked on a film at this scale at all. And it was like Jen and Daniel had worked together on something I'd seen and I loved it. And when we started, it was like you know, you write something and it's your baby and it's in your brain, but then you quickly learn that like it's only going to get better when other people get involved. And what's great about working with like 3 main people is, you know, I might think something's right, and then the 2 of them will be able to explain to me like, no, this is gonna be the right way, and then you see it. And I think with only one other collaborator, it can, you know, be a little more difficult to get a point across. But like having Jen and Daniel who really knew what they were doing, it was so helpful for me, having a million ideas and then realizing, you know, this is the right one to do. And so I think our hands, all 3 of our hands, are all over the final product, and it really felt like a collaboration.
That's, I imagine that can be very tricky though. With, you know, usually, well, not usually, but I would think often with, if you have 3 people spearheading any kind of project in any kind of business, there could be a tendency of 2 ganging up on one or you know, or hard feelings. You know, I mean, I think you have to kind of check your ego a little bit at the door, especially when it's, for you, Zachary, when it's, you know, initially it's your baby with it being your script, where, you know, a lot of trust is involved, I imagine. And
sure, yeah. I think what like I just have a memory of, I think, I don't remember, it was one of the days we staged a lot of the shots before the cast was there because we didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I just remember like there was a moment when Daniel and Dean like climbed into a random stairwell for this shot, and it was like a section of the boat in 5 years I'd never even stepped on. And within like an hour on the boat, they were like nuzzled into this tiny spot with their camera, and it was like, okay, how exciting to have fresh eyes in this space.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what you want in a DP. And it, like, the film could have never looked like it does if it was me, you know, calling all the shots. It's just, it's such a lesson. And especially I think when something, you do know something so well, you have to bring other people in.
Yeah, like you said, for the fresh eyes.
And I would add to that, I also think that the 3 of us also pretty quickly, we know what each other's strengths are. And I think that in collaborating, when you, or as you're going along and you learn really quickly what other artists and collaborators' strengths are, you can yield to that, or you can trust that. And of course, at the end of the day, from a production stand, with a producer hat on, I need Zachary. I need Zachary to feel content about what is done. So, we always talk. We talked about everything, and Zachary and I talked about everything at night. We talked about everything in the morning, and we talked with Daniel. And I just think that you know, in collaborating with anything, I think it's very helpful to know what everyone's strengths are. And maybe there was some times where I mean, there were some times where I wanted something, but at the end of the day, like, Zachary knows the story, like the heart is there. So as long as the heart is captured in post-production, we will be able to find it. And then in post-production, a lot of stuff that I wasn't quite sure about, we were able to make, or vice versa, stuff that I was, super sure about did not work. And with Daniel, and Dan, you can speak to this, a lot of, I mean, so much of the work, all of it is, so much of it is Daniel's eye and what he's going to capture, and just knowing that he knows that comedy and the clarity of also the heart of something. So it's not just a joke, but it's a joke with heart. Daniel, his work has always captured that from my eye. And there was a time where we wanted this like super, super, super wide shot, and I was dead set on. Do you guys remember? I was dead set on that super wide, and I was like, right, but don't forget the super wide. Wait, well, let's have time let's make sure, right, but when are we doing the super, super wide, like from this one angle? And obviously we didn't need it, but it was one of those things, and it was very much at the end of the day, Dan, and you need to speak on this. And I was like, okay, but what about the super wide? And Daniel's like, we're not doing the super wide, moving on. And, and you just have to go. And it's just one of those things where, like, I know Daniel knows what we have and what we don't have and what is needed and what's not. We would never move on if we didn't have something. Daniel?
Yeah.
I mean,
Daniel, did you feel that, like, SDP, do you feel sometimes you have to, like, okay, better, but you have to humor somebody?
I mean, luckily we had a couple of run-through days where we could kind of see what it looked like, and we took stills and we shot some video, and we could see the way that the film was actually going to look before we shot it 2 days later. So we got to test a lot of shots that we had questions about. But I mean, yeah, there's you have to also trust the director's tempo, that they want the movie to be.
And obviously they have to trust you too, so.
Yeah, but also we had the most amazing location, so it was just fun. And there was so many,
As far as shooting something on, I mean, a lot of the movie obviously is on a pretty confined set.
mm-hmm.
Actually, that's true of Chris's movie too, with, where a lot of it is in the auditorium. But does that present any special, or did that present any special challenges, knowing that you were shooting most of it on a ferry?
I mean, we got really lucky with weather, and I think that was our main question. That we had to have a plan for rain, and we had to have a plan for sun. And luckily we got consistent sun. But no, I mean, the movie is so fast paced and there's so much blocking happening, there's so much movement happening that, even if it is a small space, we're looking in a different direction with everything.
Yeah.
It's not like.
So you didn't have to worry about it obviously being static or monotonous because of that movement.
Yeah.
No. And also, I think also I'll use the word fear of rain, and thinking, oh, we're going to have to shoot all of this on one deck, like the overhead deck, to think that we have our full, the full set that we want, just felt kind of freeing. And also, release wise, I don't mind going in tight. I don't mind a small space, because we were outside. We were, there is other things that if you capture them, there is a concern that it might be production wise unusable. But we didn't have that problem. And luckily, just where the boat is and actually was in the dock, we really did luck out a lot with that. But yeah, we had a dream location that I just felt sort of like an embarrassment of riches, rather than sort of like restrictive at all. I didn't feel any restriction.
Yeah. Well, I can say, I mean, the results are, I mean, you really do have the sense of not just, you don't feel confined. You do feel that I mean, I could see where the weather made a huge difference because you are so aware of what a beautiful day it is and what's out there, you know, as so it makes sense, everything you're saying in terms of, you know, weather and the fact that, you know, despite the small space, it is sort of opened up too. Well,
It's good to hear that, because as anyone from the Cape knows, the sunny day can be chillingly cold, and we
Yeah.
were freezing for the whole shoot, and we had wet actors, and it was
yeah.
very cold, but it looks like a beautiful August summer day, but we were all like in sweatshirts freezing filming the movie.
That's
So glad to know.
amazing. I never in a million years would have guessed that. You know, I thought this has got to be middle of August, you know. When did you
Good.
We shot it like the last week of May, because the boat is seasonal, so we had to film before the boat opened last summer. So we had a countdown to their opening day, and we actually wrapped the day before the boat opened for the season. So we were running around with our film crew, and the actual ferry crew was running around off camera, like setting up their signs and getting ready. It was really funny.
That must have been a challenge, I would think.
No, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was. We had so many hands.
Oh,
Yeah.
We had
oh,
a
that's
perfect
good.
set. We had everything was like gorgeous and perfect. And if we, you know, little things like I'm gonna say gangplank. It's not that, but the thing that was
Gangway.
Thank you, gangway. Like we had that. That was like the water was making it making noise, and they were on it. Anything that the boat had, we had issues with sound, or were like, got us a broom or something like that. They were right there giving us everything.
Wow.
It was, you know, everything was perfect, and
That's so cool.
I mean, that's a testament actually to the crew of the Island Queen. It's an impeccable boat, and it's an impeccable ride if you ever need to get to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely felt like an embarrassment of riches.
Oh, that's great. I'm sure that a lot of filmmakers can't say that about a lot of their films. That was a horror show. Well, I think we have to wrap it up. But it's been great talking to all of you. Thank you so much for participating. And you know, this, it's actually, you know, I've seen a lot of the shorts, and I've been so impressed by the high quality of pretty much all of them. And so that certainly applies to your films too. So I hope people who have been listening to this, that after hearing from the filmmakers, that it will inspire you to seek out their films, leave them laughing. Island Queen and wonderful Milford.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
hope maybe I'll see the Barnett brothers in Mashpee or Kid, and same with Jen and Zachary. And anyway, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Chris. Well, that was interesting. Sorry if I ran off with the mouth a little bit too much there. So I wasn't sure what we were supposed to do, really. So telling the story, but I thought it was a nice opportunity to lay it out. I am too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm I usually rise at 5 anyway, so I'll try to. Now, do we go to the, is there another link that we go to? Okay, maybe you could send that to me or something. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the only one I watched was that one you sent to me from last year that got the Academy Award. God, what a film that was. Gee, it was good. Wow. I sent that to people and they came and called me back and said, oh my God, it was just, yeah. Oh, one guy, a friend of mine was one of my writing teachers. He said, you know, no cars were blown up, no buildings fell down. It was just this wonderful human emotion and the interaction and then that turn at the end. And, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, really enjoyed this morning. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. 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 Good. Thanks. Bye.